In all programming languages, we commonly work with information. That can be a name of a customer, a number of items in a cart, or a server URL. We need to store that information somewhere, and for that we use variables. A variable is a container that stores values. Let's go ahead and declare a variable. To do so, I'm going to use a let keyword. After that follows the variable name. With the equal sign, we assign a value into the variable, and then we use an actual value. In JavaScript, there are some limitations that you need to remember about for variable names. Variable name can only consist of letters, numbers, $sign characters, and underscore. Also, a variable name cannot start with a number. Thus, the following variable name is perfectly valid. However, if I were to put a number in the beginning, JavaScript will argue and it will error out at me because this is not allowed. Sometimes we may want to make the variable names a little bit more meaningful and use multiple words in the variable name. To make it more readable in JavaScript, we use something called Camel Case. For example, if I need to define a variable first name, I would go ahead and write it this way. In Camel Case, every subsequent word in the sequence starts with a capital letter. You also need to remember that letter case matters. If I were to define two variables, call one first name and the other one first name in Camel Case, I need to remember that to JavaScript, these will be two different values, two different variables. JavaScript also allows us to define a constant. For a constant, we use the keyword const. Variables declared with this keyword are impossible to change. An attempt to do so will lead to an error. If you're sure you will never change this value, you can use const keyword. It will be a great visual indicator for other developers that your value here will remain the same throughout the entire script execution. Coming up with variable names is considered an art on its own. Through your programming journey, try your best to come up with meaningful and yet short variable names. Try to avoid abbreviations and names that do not represent anything. For example, a generic word data doesn't really tell you much of what is stored in the variable. However, if I were to call it user data, this will make it a little bit more specific and will be a better variable name in this case. In older scripts, you may still see variable declarations with the keyword var. It is still a valid notation, but it is considered deprecated. We will look into exact differences between let, const versus var when we get to functions and control structures. For now, just remember that let and const are the newer standard and you should be using those.